Hey people, good morning. Happy Tuesday on this 4th of July week. And I hope you all are doing great. Alpha, I saw you pop that question up real quick on the soaker scrub thing. If you're dealing with bones, I honestly just throw it in a plastic mixing bowl, run a lot of hot water in there with just a few drops, like a drizzle of dish soap, and sploosh it around. I just like whirl it around in there, just like, like this with my hand, and just then rinse it off thoroughly by, dumping the water out, putting water in, splooshing it around, dumping it out, putting more water in, splooshing it around. And then I just let it dry overnight. So I never scrub with bones. I don't find it necessary. I never have problems with paint sticking to the mini with bones. Likewise, like with metal models, you may need to get down into areas. With resin models, you may want to use some isopropyl, which I think they say melts the mold release, gets the mold release off like the best. Before you prime it, things like that. But with bones, I never have to scrub. Hey everybody, good morning. Hey Coobs, hey Chewy and Kimnico and Stephen Phillip and Automama. Thanks for the sub. Yeah, one more toward an AMA. Hey Justin, we got like 3 or 4 yesterday. What are we out toward our AMA?
Let me double check here.
Yeah. Also, fair warning, guys. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I believe the soft count is 38.
Ah, okay. All right. So we're getting there. We're over half, just like I thought. Fair warning, guys. Kiri may explode again. I had to up her food because she's been losing weight a little bit. I think it's just because she's getting more exercise out here than she ever got in Texas. But I just noticed yesterday maybe she's lost a tiny bit, so I've upped her food, but that means that the Kiri is more prone to explosion. So yeah, it's been a rough night, a rough next day. But Kiri's happy. She got duck yesterday because we roasted a duck, and she got an extra scrambled egg on her food last night. So yeah, Kiri's happy, except when, explosions happen and mommy gets upset. So we may get another Kiri explosion during the stream today. I would not be surprised. I tried my hardest to make sure the dog was empty, but you just never know. So yeah, dog stuff. Alpha GG, pick something simple. Or something bigger. Actually, the rock troll that I had that had the crystals on it, except for the crystals, something like that troll is a really good subject. It depends also on your brush control. Like if you're still working on brush control and you can't hit fine details very well yet, then pick a mini that's simple and doesn't have a crap ton of small detail on it. Pick something that's maybe got a big cloak, maybe big, nice big chunky broad armor without a lot of tiny filigree or little bags or tiny buckles. And I would not pick rogues that have tons of straps and buckles. It's that sort of thing. You don't want to pick a model that's too intricate because you're just going to get frustrated, and you want your first experience to be good. So, and also pick a model that you really like. I mean, and by that conversely, pick a few models, look at a few models, see which ones make you really excited to paint them, and then try to pick the simplest of those. Alrighty. Yo, dudes. Yeah. Kiri's happy puppy. Kiri's a happy puppy, but mommy is not so happy. It is what it is. Old dog is old. What you gonna do? She's sitting here smiling right now. She's I turned on the AC in our little office here. We have different AC units in every room, so we can control every room. So she's got this big smile on her face because it's nice and cool in here. If you have so many models you're excited to paint that it causes mental gridlock, I very much recommend getting them all out. Clear off your entire kitchen table. I love this. I love doing this, Nomad Zeke. In fact, I'm about to do it again. Spread out all your models on the table, or as many of them as you possibly can. You probably don't have so many models you're excited to paint that they will fill a whole table, but if so, well, good for you. And then make them fight for your love. Kind of look, and you're well, I'm more excited about this one than that one. So this one, and, put aside the one that you're not as excited about in a box. Get a big box, right? Or a big tote or something. And just process of elimination it until you have 5. Just 5 minis that you are most excited about right now. And then just keep, everybody else goes in the closet or under the bed or out of sight. It doesn't matter. Just close the box up. It's still around. You still got them. Put it out of sight. And that does wonders for my mental clarity. I really have to do that right now because I've got commissions on my plate, and I've got a tutorial model for my mentoring session, and I've got stuff that I've been meaning to work on and haven't gotten to, and then brand new stuff that I'm super excited about. You add all that up and it gets crushing, right? For me, it gets crushing very quickly. The minute stuff starts to go above 4 or 5 models, by the time it gets to 10, I'm and I'm feeling like I can't do anything. So definitely pare it down. I love just spreading out all my awesome stuff over the table because it's fun, right? Then I'm looking forward to it because then I get to look at all my stuff again and really say, okay, what do I really love? You know, that kind of thing. Let's see here. Let's see. Lots of chat this morning. Lots of chat. Let me see here, chat. I got to catch up on you. Let's see here. Oh, I got an emote thing. Thanks to Otter Mama's subscription, we got another emote? Really? That's pretty cool. Super. Yeah, I like resin a lot too, Kronika. Let's see here. Yeah, I never believe in the pulling a mini out at random real chibi. I really like to make them fight for my love because then I know that the model I pull out is really one I really, really am psyched to work on, and then the progress is going to go better. It just is. When you're really excited. Unless you just like that whole random grab bag thing and you really can't choose, then if you're totally indecisive, then sure, pillowcase. Yeah, Mathophile's correct. Golems and Trolls. Golems and Trolls and big models like that also tend to be good for practicing your blending, for example, and practicing your highlighting because the muscle masses can be very well defined, and so it can be a good thing to try to put highlights on the upper surfaces. You know, it can be a little bit easier. NMM Silver Paint, Cervantes. We don't have an NMM Silver Paint triad, but we do have one. A triad that came out that actually works for it, weirdly. I talked about it a bit on my Patreon a while ago. But there's a Kickstarter triad that's Carbon Gray, Foggy Gray, and then Moonstone Blue. And the reason the Moonstone Blue, which is a kind of a grayish blue, is in there, is that usually when you're doing NMM steel, you're going to get a sky reflection. So a lot of people mix blue into their NMM. So a lot of times, a lot of people started using that triad for NMM silver and steel because they could just mix the Moonstone Blue together with the Carbon Gray, then shade with the Carbon Gray, which is a nice dark, it's really a charcoal gray, and we've needed that in the line for a long time. And then Foggy Gray is almost white. It's almost white. So you can bring it up by mixing in some Foggy Gray, bring it up to there, and then just do a little bit of a pure white highlight at the end. So that is one triad you could use. The other one, everything else is you want to do a neutral gray, and you usually want to introduce some other color into it to make it a little more complicated. Like I said, most people do blue because of the sky. You could also do brown if you're looking at sort of, if your mini's in a cave, you kind of got to think about it. NMM is reflective, so at its base level, you're just dealing with shades of gray, but it gets more complicated very quickly. That's why we haven't really put out like a triad for it, other than that one that people are using, the Carbon Gray, Moonstone Blue, and Foggy Gray, because it would just be another gray triad, right? It would just be Stormy Gray, Cloudy Gray, Rainy Gray, Misty Gray, right? That's what it would be. You could pick up those 4 paints and you've got various transition grays, and that's okay for practicing. Plus, I usually go real dark for the shadow, like Gray Liner, and pure white, always pure white for your highlight on NMM, always. But other than that, it's so NMM Steel and Silver is one of the most complex things that you can take on to do. So, I mean, use shades of gray, figure out your highlights and shadows, then start getting a little more complex as you totally get to understand how the light acts. NMM is not necessarily a mechanical technique. It is a conceptual technique. You have to think about how light falls and how it reflects. So... let's see. This is the huge one. Yeah, you can see it on his tag, right? Huge, right there. So, yeah, I mean, definitely make everything fight for your love. The other thing that putting it all out on the table and kind of looking through it does, Coos, in my opinion, is because you're giving time to your hobby and you automatically get a little excited about it, right? Because you're looking at all these minis that are really awesome and you can, like, really kind of let yourself just enjoy them as you look through them and kind of make them fight for your love. So it can get you a little bit more into the things. If you find you're burned out, you might also try to switch it up. What I usually do is switch scale or switch genre. So if I'm sick of fantasy, I try to grab a sci-fi mini. And if I'm sick of 28mm, I grab a 75mm or a bust. And if I'm sick of busts, I scale like to a 75mm, something like that. I find that switching it up that way, even if you're burnt out on Reaper, go grab a Dark Sword or something, right? So try to switch that way. Let's see here. Yeah, you could make a random encounter miniatures table. That's true. Pile of shame. Yeah. I get really overwhelmed if I have more than 5 or 6, so. Image, I mean, yeah, I mean, we all run into that quandary at one point or another, even I do, where, you know, you're like, oh, but I really want to master this technique before I tackle this miniature. Then I'd just say, you know, I'd recommend maybe getting 2 of them. I mean, that's how I, like, got over it. It's like the only thing I really hang up on now is if it's limited edition, where I know I only have 1, and I only ever will have 1, right? Then it's a little harder. Well, that's fine, Gurgi. I mean, do it. Rock it. I mean, because it will let you prune down and you won't be overwhelmed, right? So it's worth it. Even if you cover the whole table and the whole floor. Then that's even more fun. That's half a day to sort through those. Let's see here. Right, but we're not talking about your whole collection, right? Nomad Zeke? Like, this is the thing. He's excited. He's got several minis he's excited about. Like, we all have tons of minis, but we also have a smaller selection of minis that we are truly excited about. And the other minis are just kind of like, this is a cool mini, but, you know, I'm not, like, totally into this mini this instant, right? We have a short list, right? So we're talking about spreading out your short list, kind of making them fight for your love and coming away with 2 or 3 possibilities that you're really, truly excited about. I mean, I have tons of models in my closet, and I am not super excited about all of them at the same time to the same level. Let's see here. Yeah, I care and I don't care, right, Dragon Eye? Yeah, when you're just practicing, use one from the don't care group. That's a good idea. Oh, thanks, Masara. 5 months. Thank you for the Twitch Prime. We now have another toward our AMA, and I'm excited about our AMA, actually. We've got just a few questions up in the channel, but they're good questions. Yeah. Well, it's just paint. I mean, well, Remer, there's 2 schools of thought on that, right? I find that if you're going to do that, if you're going to repaint a model, then I'd recommend painting it and then waiting quite a while, like maybe 6 months, a year, depending on how fast you're progressing, before you paint over it. A lot of people make the mistake of like painting the same model over a few times relatively close together. And I feel really strongly that one model will only be able to teach you so much. So you're better off painting it, putting it aside, then coming back to it. If you're going to repaint a model, I don't like stripping. Stripping can just be a pain in the butt and can ruin your enthusiasm level in my experience. So maybe just make sure you're using thinner paint to paint it the first time around. You should be able to prime right over it and paint it again. You would have to put so many layers of paint on a model, especially if you're using a big one, before it globs up detail. I once painted a model's face and hair 5 times in a row, and that's base coat, shadow, and like 3 or 4 levels of highlights. And only by the end of the 25th layer was I starting to lose a little definition on the hair. So that gives you an idea, you know, how much you can do. And that's with a very fine detailed model. All right, let's see here. Airbrush Methophile. I think probably if you want to paint things super fast for the table, that's probably one of the ways you could do it. Yeah, also speed paint practice, like using the wet palette, like I was doing on the bed beast, the bed mocking beast. Let's see here. Yeah, one thing good to do on speed painting is also to work on lighting, because you can do quick blends. Yeah. Look for something then. Look for something that you're really into, Coobs. Or just start something. You could just start something and make it an exercise. Tell yourself that I'm going to try and mem on this model. Why not? Let's just sit down and do it. Try it for half an hour. See if you can kind of get into it. Sometimes if you just don't do it, you're just never going to get into it. And so it's getting into that mindset is making yourself, you know, the muse doesn't strike. You make the muse strike. I mean, I believe in this firmly as a writer and as a painter. If you never do it, then you're less likely to be interested in doing it. Well, with that, the Dragonstone is pretty rare, Gurgi, but on the other side, it's metal, which is, of all of the things, I think the easiest to strip. So, I mean, you could start it and just go slow on it and try to really do a great job. Push yourself. Hey, it's just like imposter syndrome. It never goes away. You just get over. You learn to get over it, right? You learn it to just beat it down. Yeah. All right. All right. All right. All right. Oh yeah, Maldrakar. Yeah, I have him. I have two of him. Alpha. I have the resin, which is $600 or something, and ridiculous. And then I have one in plastic. So I have the throwaway one and the not so throwaway one. And it really is. Maldrakar is a model, in my opinion, that I will have to break up into small chunks in order to eventually paint. All right. Yeah, you totally should link your Prime info to your Twitch account, Real Chibi, because then you can sub us without using actual money. Yeah, Infinity is a good thing to break it up. Wow, you guys have so much chat this morning. Wow, total chat. Woo. Alrighty. Mal's wings are perfectly scaled to make your cats look like a Trissum. That's fantastic. No, that's I think that's almost impossible there, Chibi. I mean, it's not OSL then. It's not OSL. Like, you could probably do it if you did, like, kind of streaks, like, it looked at black holes, but black holes, even then, like, are the thing we call a black hole, you know, you'd have to paint a black hole. And even then, the pictures, quote unquote, that we have of black holes are not really, you know, they're renderings, they're not actual black holes. We have no idea what an actual black hole looks like, to my knowledge, except a big blot, right? So you'd have to do it the way the movies do it to make it look, like, correct, like it's sucking in light. Alright. Alrighty. Alright. Well, you'd probably have to use a gem in the middle of something. I mean, you'd probably want to do a diorama with, like, a wall or an altar with a gem in the middle and try to do that whole light swirling look. You'd almost have to make it from scratch, I think, to get the right sort of thing. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, now that we've, like, totally sucked up a ton of time, not actually painting, we will get our palette in frame and look at Mr. Fire Giant. Huge Fire Giant. Props to Bernie. And we'll rock it here. So we've got a lot of skin on this guy, and I always tend to start with skin, since it's painting from the inside out. It's one of the many ways, the kind of philosophies of painting a model is to, if you're not sure where to start, either start with the area the thing that takes up the most area on the model, or start with the skin and work out from there. I tend to like starting from the skin. I feel it gives everything a good foundation. And it tells me right away if I'm going to have to, like, work a little oddly. Like, if I pick a weird color for the skin, then I might have to work around. The skin color can very much dictate other colors on the model. Like, if you're doing a miniature of color and you're doing, like, an African skin tone, that's going to kind of dictate some of your other color choices, because you're going dark with the skin, and somehow you have to attract attention to that. Because the face, you know, is an important part of the model and the expression. And so sometimes you have to change your other color ideas to make sure that you draw attention to the expression of the model. I'm just getting some little mold lines off of this sucker, because why not? There we go. I was going to do dumpster today, but then I didn't quite get it put together last night. I got completely distracted. Mostly because my boyfriend wanted to give me presents in Path of Exile, so I had to log in, and then I was logged in, so I ran a map. Can't help it. Video games attacked. News at 10. The dumpster is, however, almost completely together, so it just needs priming. I'm gonna do the skin on this guy, Alpha GG. I think it's a dark skin tone with Fire Giants. Almost always. It depends, really. I mean, that's just the convention, because the fiery hair looks so good against dark skin, and you can also do glowing eyes and such. So this guy doesn't have very much face showing, so a lot of his skin's going to be out here. I have to kind of look and see where his various skin bits are to make sure. I think it's just this hand, that hand, the arms there, and the face. No, it looks like he's got a little bit of skin showing down here. Just a tiny bit. Like on the leg there. So I need to keep that in mind. I like to paint, if I'm going to do, especially if I'm mixing colors, like for dark skin tones, I like to get everything blocked in at once. And I was going to just keep using the Dungeon Dwellers colors. because I had it in my mind to just really put these through their paces. And so quite a bit of mixing, I'm afraid. I often go very simple with my lessons here on stream, but sometimes I just want to mix colors. Just looking to see if I have any mold lines. Eventually we will get to this sword, and we will absolutely do glowing runes, by the way, on this dude, and maybe even some cracked lava effect on the blade. I could go NMM also, if you wanted me to. Hi, Flip6. This is... Nice to meet you, by the way. This is Skorg, Fire Giant King. Huge. I was just talking about how I'm probably going to mix something up for his skin tone. He is a very large miniature. You can see him in my hands. One of Reaper's big new giants. I really like how we are, for once, like actually doing giants to scale. Our plastics have let us do that. So he is gigantic. He also has an awesome cape. I'm probably going to do several lessons on him over the course of this coming, like, week and next week. I'm going to swap around a bit between him, and I've also got, like, a dumpster to do some sci-fi effects on. I've got a troll that we started last week that people want me to continue painting, so we'll work on him a little bit, you know, in the coming couple weeks. I'm here pretty much every day, although actually this is a really good prompt. We are taking Friday off for the 4th of July, guys, just so you know. Justin gets to go play golf with his family, and I get to, I don't know, do something. Yeah, the cape is really cool on this model. I think I'm going to do a pattern. There's so many little scales. I think you've got to do a pattern with this, right? So we can do something cool with it. I'm kind of like thinking in my mind about what you might be able to do.
Actually, we could take that opportunity too, and to tell our viewers to stay as safe as they can for 4th of July.
Yes.
And to don't get sick so you can't watch our show.
Right, yeah, we definitely don't want you to get sick. Don't get sick. So I'm going to do some weird stuff. Let's do weird stuff. I figure, so usually Fire Giants have like blue-black skin, or they have like more of an African-American skin tone, or they've got a purplish skin tone. I thought I would mix something up and see if I could get it to work. Since I'm limiting myself to Dungeon Dwellers skin tones, I kind of have to kind of work with stuff like this. So... let me see here. So we're gonna put down some. For one thing, I want it to be dark, so I'm gonna start with Dungeon Gray. Gray is not a bad idea for a skin tone for a fire giant because obviously they're ashy, right? Yeah, stay out of melee range, right? Good for Arizona, right, Mathophile? It's almost. It's yeah, no joke, right, Corinico? Yeah, be awesome. Like, just have fun. Have some fun. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then let's... normally I'd go a little purple. I wonder what happens if I go... I kind of want to mix these two, but that's just going to take us violet. Maybe I need to mix these two. I'm just playing around at this point. So what we've got here is we've got Dungeon Gray. And these come in little box sets, the Dungeon Dwellers paints. They are... Reaper Bones Dungeon Dwellers. And a bunch of people may have gotten them for ReaperCon a couple years back. I'm of the opinion that this set is very versatile. Really, really versatile. It can't go bright. That's the one thing it really can't do. It doesn't have, like, clear brights or anything. 1, 2, 3. Let's do 3 Goblin Skin and see what kind of color we get. That'd be interesting. Or maybe let's do 2. I just want a little bit of light in there. All right, so we're going to go gray, red, and orange and see what that gives us. Because fun. Let's see here. Social distance stabbing. Let's see here. Interesting. Okay, so that actually does give us kind of a brownish skin tone. Kind of an ashen brown. I wonder, I'm just throwing stuff together, so I kind of wonder if I add a little purple in, if it's going to go away. I like. And I'm mixing a nice big puddle of it, because since I'm doing kind of random colors here. That's interesting. I want to have a lot of it. Remember that if you're working with a well palette instead of a wet palette, you absolutely can put saran wrap over the top of it, cling wrap, to keep your paints wet. We'll see if I like this color. I'm going to put this color on. I'm kind of making mud, but I kind of like this particular mud. Like, everybody kind of, like, sneers and goes, oh, you just made mud. But mud can be useful, dang it. Let's see here. I could just go dark gray with it, too, but that seems so boring. Let me put it down and see if I like... Yeah, that's actually a pretty good skin color for a fire giant. It's kind of a warm grayed out brown. It's dark. I'm using a good brush to get the base coat on here because it's a relatively small area for his face all around the beard and such. So really, when I set out to mix this, I didn't have anything particularly in mind except that I might want it to shift a little purplish. I still might do that for the shadows. And I knew that I wanted it to be a little brown, so that meant using some red and orange when you're mixing it. Remember, gray is just black and white. So essentially, if you mix orange with a bit of black, you tend to get a brownish color. So that's the color theory, the pigment theory behind what I'm doing here. Is Dungeon Gray is a lot of black, and black plus orange and red tends to go purpley or browny. So that's why I did it that way. Because I knew I tend to paint my my fire giants with skin tones that are a muted brown. Let's see here. I'm just going to block in our skin. And actually, since this is such a big model, we can use a bigger brush to block in our skin. I mean, I am using a pretty big brush, but I mean, something that's a flat works really well. You don't want to do it as a glaze over everything Mathophile. You want to kind of like probably use a brush and stipple some dark gray here and there. Soot wouldn't blow evenly over the whole model. Soot is probably going to be a smudge. So soot would be in patches here and there, and it would probably be in predictable patches, like depending on where it's coming from. So why is your fire giant sooty? You know? And think about, did he get soot on his hands? Did he just wipe it across his armor? Maybe has a smudge near his face or on his helmet. That sort of thing. So I've got this little flat brush, which covers the area pretty nicely. It allows me to pick up a fair amount of paint and to cover an area very quickly if I wish to. Yeah, I don't know. I guess soot effects on this model would be better than a lot of others. I think soot is very hard to carry off on a small model. But on a big one like this, you could do it. But yeah, the biggest mistake I see with weathering effects like soot or mud or anything or oil is that people try to slobber it all over the mini and they don't think about where it goes. So that's why I say, think about where this would logically have hit on your mini. Why this giant is sooty. Where would he have picked it up? Where would it most likely be deposited? And don't just put a layer of it everywhere, because that would be like, he'd have to get stuck in an ash storm, and even then, the sootiness would be like in the crevices, probably, you know, and it would probably kind of run in areas where he's sweating or things like that. So I don't know. It's hard. It's easy to apply an effect like all over the place, and all it does is look dirty, and you don't actually end up getting the effect that you're going for. So think about where things should be. Like, a lot of people will put like a brown wash over an entire surface and say, well, it's covered in oil. But it's like, well, oil actually would leak out in specific places. It would drip down. It wouldn't like slather itself over the whole mini. So things like that. Right, but you mentioned, what did you say, washes? I guess I misunderstood what you said then, Mathophile, because it sounded like you were putting a layer evenly over an area. No, hold on. Gotta get back to where you guys have so many questions today. Yeah, I do not prime bones models, actually. We should be very specific about that. Somebody asked if it's boned. Yeah, I don't prime. Don't say I don't prime Reaper minis, because I absolutely prime Reaper minis when they're metal. But yeah, washed means that I just put it in a big bowl with a little bit of dish soap and hot water, swoosh it around, rinse it off, and let it dry overnight. That removes any mold release that's on the surface of the plastic, and that way you don't have to prime. You can just paint right on it, and I don't have any problem with the paint sticking. Let's see here. Well, there's two things like flip sticks. There's wash your bones before you paint them if you're not going to prime, and then there's washes as a technique, which is different. Thinned paint is what you're using then. Art charcoal, yeah, you could do. I mean, art charcoal is just like using ground up pastels, which is exactly what weathering powders are, or used to be, Nomad Zeke. So yeah, you could do that. I mean, be careful because you don't want to inhale that stuff. But you'll have to use a fixative afterwards. So you have to use a spray sealer to fix that stuff in place after you do it. Unless you're going to actually mix it with a solvent. Some solvents might seal it. It's hard to get that kind of dusted effect, though, if you try to mix it with a fluid medium. Oh, let's see here. I kind of think that Nomad Zeke has the best idea of just using art charcoal sticks. Grind them up on the side of like a tea ball is usually what I hear people say if you have one in the house. Be sure to wash your tea ball thoroughly afterwards. All right, so that's pretty good. I don't think he's got any other skin. He does have a skin there by his hair, his ear. Oh, and his big hand. I totally forgot his big hand. I wouldn't use dry brushing because it's not going to be a realistic texture for soot. Dry brushing is a realistic texture for very, very few things. It does work well on vehicles because you can build up that scratchy layer of road dust and muck and stuff on vehicles with it. But in general, I would say that you probably want to stipple, and I almost might use weathering powders if you really want that diffused smudge effect. Soldier's not here. I actually did use black weathering powder to do a smoke effect on his skin, like from an explosion. It was really the best thing to use for it. Maybe if I have some time, I'll run into the bedroom and get Soldier out. Or maybe I have pictures. Hold on. I bet I've got a picture. Where are we? Man, today is just something. Painting. Let me go to my website here. Trying to load my website. All right, Soldier. All right, so Soldier here. See those dusty marks on his forehead? That's done with black weathering powders. You could easily use art charcoal also. I used a large, big, fluffy brush, and I smudged them onto the skin, and then I did a layer of spray sealer over it. That's the best way to do soot. I did a bit on his hair, too. You can see it. So that would be a better, in my opinion. Now, he's very large. Soldier is a foot tall, so obviously I had room to do that, but even for something like this guy, I think you still could manage using a smaller, fluffier brush. You could do smudges on various areas. Now, this does work better over light colors, obviously. It's going to be a lot harder to get it to carry over dark colors. Let's see here. Just trying to block in some skin tones. Then I might make a kind of a purpley shadow, and then I might see what I can put together for a highlight on him. So this is a big mix of many different colors because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to use the Dungeon Dwellers paints. Everybody might have noticed. And even a little bit of that. So really I'm making kind of mud. I wanted a purplish brown because that's what I usually do skin colors with. So I used a lot of gray, 6 drops of gray, 3 drops of this, 2 and 2. And these are all Dungeon Dwellers paints. They're all, 2 of them are from the The actual dungeon box, 2 of them are the humanoid skin tones monster box. So we've got goblin skin, kobold skin, dungeon gray, and eldritch purple. Like I said, the Dungeon Dwellers is kind of a nice set of paints to have. They're not bright, but they give you some very useful off tones to play with. Oh, and I need to get his hand that's holding a sword too. Let's see, what do we got? Yeah, I didn't use isopropyl for soldier. I wanted it to look dusty, and I wanted the soot effect. Isopropyl isn't going to give you that really diffused effect. So it depends on what you want, Mathophile. Yeah, I won't forget his other hand. The pale ale effect. Let's see here. Ebony skin is made to be highlighted with ebony flesh and ruddy flesh are the 2 African skin tones in the Bones line. If you have Pathfinder or you want to pick it up, Mwangi Brown, which is their dark skin tone, is a great mid-tone for those. So like ebony flesh and then Mwangi Brown and then ruddy flesh. But usually, Dan Shan. Usually Dan Shan, ruddy flesh and ebony were made to go together. Let's see if I have one. Ruddy flesh is like this. And you don't necessarily want to mix them because ruddy flesh has a lot of yellow in it and ebony is very black. So I really just layer this over the top of the ebony, or I lay down the ruddy flesh if I want that more golden African skin tone, and then I shade with the ebony. So it depends on how blue-black you want your skin tone. The ebony flesh is really made for that blue-black, really dark African skin tone, and this is made more for that beautiful golden-brown African skin tone. So they're kind of made to be on their own, but you can shade and highlight them with each other. And I've done it a lot, actually. No problem, Danshan. I did a little thing on my Patreon about that, but I think there's a model. Guys, what's that cute little mage that I did in blue and pink? There's a cute Lashara. Is that her? If you look up in our Reaper store, I think it's Lashara Danshan. We did a little mage who's definitely got some African features going on. I painted her with an African skin tone, and she's adorable. And I did her in blue and pink, but I did use the ruddy flesh and ebony flesh on her. She's more ruddy and shaded with ebony. And then to highlight ruddy, I usually actually add in a yellow. I usually add in NMM gold highlight or something like that, or lemon yellow, 9009. Lashana, thank you. So yeah, exactly, Danshan. So that's how I did that one, as I did it with ruddy flesh to give her that beautiful golden brown skin tone that I just adore. I think it's so pretty. And then shaded by thinning down some ebony flesh. And then I highlighted by adding in, I believe, the NMM gold highlight, or lemon yellow works too, 9009. More people probably have 9009 than they have the NMM highlight, but NMM gold highlight really is the bomb for this sort of thing, in my opinion. All right, I have another mold line. I do not like you, mold line. Get off of my mini. This guy looked so pristine out the gate. I just totally neglected to see all these mold lines that I need to gouge out and take out. Where is I want a smaller tipped brush for this. There we go. So I'm switching back and forth with shapes of brushes, you guys may notice, as I am moving to different areas on the model. Like if I need a small tip, I go to a big brush that can carry a lot of paint, but I want that smaller tip to get into these smaller areas. So I do this on everything I paint. I switch to as big a brush as I can get away with to base coat big areas so that it goes fast, because base coating is really the most tedious part of the model, especially on something big. That's also why I tend to paint in sections. It's one of the many reasons, is that then I'm not base coating the entire model, which takes forever and is really boring. I forgot his mouth, and I need this other hand. Hello, everybody. Hey, Curly Hamster. Nice to see ya. We're starting on, and I will continue on this guy tomorrow, on his skin, because I just decided that I really wanted to paint. There's so many things on this guy to demo for you guys, like to talk about as far as painting him. I mean, he's got fur, he's got a huge sword, he's got all this beautiful detailing around his, around his arm guards. He's got an amazing cloak that we totally have to paint on camera, and he's got armor, and there's just so much. There's so much on this guy that we could talk about for painting. So you probably are going to see him quite a bit. And as I've mentioned before, I'm thinking of going to a format more like we're painting like 5 different models and we're just doing a couple days on each. So that way we get closer to like finishing a model. And I make sure that I can hit like a whole bunch of different topics on a model without like just sticking to one model all week, right? So we can kind of dance back and forth is kind of what I'm thinking. That way you guys get to see Rock Troll get a little bit more done. And you get to see this guy like get a lot of his different areas painted, and we can do different techniques on every side of the dumpster and stuff like that. I maybe even go back to Rocky and do more red scales on him on a different area. There are models that I'm working on right now that I ordered because I really like them, and so I would actually like to do more work on them. There. His hand was a little bit lightweight as far as the coat didn't go on perfectly evenly, so I decided to go and do another one. This giant sword is so cool, and I can't wait to paint it. Let's see here. Yeah, it is a nice model, isn't it, 5D? Yeah, that's why I decided I was going to spend a lot of time on him. Some models, like the bed mimic that I painted last week, are easy kind of like, 2 sessions and dones. But when you get to a model that's this awesome, you don't want to just rush it. It's hard when your painting sessions, at least my painting sessions here for Reaper, are only like an hour and a half. So does anybody have any awesome plans for the 4th of July that nonetheless are safe and do not involve setting you, yourself, or others on fire? I think David has Thursday off and Friday, so we're thinking about going hiking in the redwoods. Taking a little bit of a break. Getting out on the trails and social distancing and still having fun. There's so many beautiful places so close to here. That's some hot dogs, huh? Yeah, we have to figure out what we're having. I mean, I've been cooking all sorts of fancy stuff lately. I mean, we did a roasted duck last night, for gosh sakes. It's mostly because I constantly am reminded every time I have duck that it might be Kiri's last duck, and she loves duck. So, but now we've got the ingredients for duck risotto, of course. After you do a duck, that's what you have to do. And we have burgers, but maybe we should have held off our burgers till... Maybe we'll do steaks for the 4th. I don't know. We haven't done steaks for a long time. Yeah. Although also fish tacos sound good. I love fish tacos. That'd be a good 4th of July food too. Hi, Xandercles. Yes, painting. It's painting. Painting for the 4th? Yeah, we'll probably do a fair bit of that too. I feel like I haven't been working on my own projects very much lately. I have some stuff to get done for the Patreon today. I had videos that I shot that I have to edit today and get them up for my patrons. And I meant also to get a PDF done, so I don't know, that might be a day late. But yeah, I feel like I've been not getting a lot done on my own projects lately, but that's fine. It comes and goes. The Patreon is pretty much my job these days. This is my second job. So what's wrong about this? It's like I still have 2 jobs. So I stopped working full-time for Reaper and end up still working 2 jobs. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Got a nice solid coat there. Now, let's see here. Yeah, that's probably good. I might line him to make everything stand out. Got to make sure that I've got all his bits. Bits, 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 bits. Looks like all the bits are done. Excellent. Let's see. Yeah, when your job and your side hustle are both fun. Oh dear. Oh no, not fires. Fireworks mooching. You're living vicariously through your neighbors, Lebrowski. Yes, hence the drunken. Yeah, it's definitely better to drink when you watch a movie you know is going to be somewhat terrible, or at least disappointing compared to the original material, right? So what I like to do second on skin is I like to line, and today, well, maybe I will actually use a liner. Should I use blue liner? Yeah, I think blue. I like to use blue liner for fiery creatures. Let me get a little closer here. Here, hold on. Boom, and boom. So I like to use blue liner for fiery creatures because it's a complementary color. The blue is technically, blue liner is, it's a very dark, dark, dark blue. So you usually really don't see the blue in it. But nonetheless, it's a good contrast for a brown, which is really just an orange. Remember, we mixed this by adding in orange and red. And I'm going to be doing a lot of orange, right, for the beard and all that sort of thing on this guy, because he is a fire giant. So for that, I sometimes like to go with a blue liner. Oh, let's see here. I'm just going to make sure I'm not losing anything out of the, what's the mid color? Oh, I did a huge mix, Crowley Hamster. I actually mixed 4 different Dungeon Dwellers colors together for his skin because I thought I wanted to stick mostly to Dungeon Dwellers colors for this. Just because I'm kind of, lately I'm kind of putting this paint set through its paces to really see what it can do. And so I thought I would try to mix something instead of going with a straight out of the bottle color. So I ended up going with a base of Dungeon Gray. And originally I thought I was going to go for a lot more gray of a skin tone, but then I added in some Goblin Skin and Kobold Scale. I had a couple drops of Eldritch Purple to cool it down a bit because it was looking a bit like orangey mud. Threw some purple in it to cool it down. So that's, believe it or not, 6 drops of this, 3, 2, 2. So that's a very big paint puddle. But I knew I was going to want it because not only is he very large, so I'm going to use a lot of paint, and I didn't want to remix this color. But I also can then, I have enough to shift over to, mix a first highlight. Viva Aqua, fire giants usually are painted with dark skin. Purely, I think the reason that convention started was for contrast. The idea of ashy colored skin, or coal colored skin next to fiery beard. I'm pretty sure that's why that whole convention got started for fire giants. That's what I would guess. Morning, Gridlock. I hope you're having a lovely day. I'm having a day. But the fire giant's going okay, so we're fine. So I'm going to go with a blue liner. I put about 6 drops down, and I tossed a couple of drops of water in it. Remember that the liners are somewhat translucent, so if you want a more subtle effect, you put more water in. If you want them to be very dark, more cartoony effect, then keep them close to full strength, although I always add at least 1 drop of water. So if you were only going to get a little bit thinned on them, I would probably do 6 drops of blue liner, 1 drop of water. And because you want it a little bit, you want it to be fluid enough that it's going to come off your brush easily. Yeah, I'm just doing color mixing today. I decided, what the heck? I usually just use straight out of the bottle, but you guys have been with me for a while. You know what I'm capable of with crazy mixing. So with lining, the reason I do it now is that if I screw up, I can try to screw up onto the unpainted surface. And that is great, right? Because then you don't have to sweat it, as long as you don't screw up toward the skin. And to keep from screwing up onto the skin side, you kind of come at it at an angle. So I'm doing this line and I'm pushing this way. So if my brush skids, it's going to skid out. It's not going to skid in toward the skin. And I'm using, guys have noticed that lately I've been using a Raphael instead of my usual Da Vinci Maestro. I'm really getting to like this brush after using it. I was using it mostly because I was using a wet palette, but it's broken in very well, and its tip is so razor sharp now that I can do almost anything with it. So yeah, coming at it again, I'm pushing toward the unpainted area so that if it goes outside of the lines, it's more likely to go onto the unpainted area. And this lining in this case just kind of, lining is kind of a forced shadow. The convention of lining, where it comes from. I mean, obviously you see it in cartoons and animated series, but even there, it's a forced shadow. It's putting a line between one thing and another, implies a shadow there. And if you're doing a cartoon and you're not interested in realism and you really just want to get your shapes up on the screen, then that's really all the shading you need. Go put a line between the beard and the face. I'm going to fill in the sockets of the eyes, really with this dark color as well. Here I have to be a little more delicate. I don't want to mess it up, so just go slow. Try not to really tense up on your brush, because that'll make you shake. And you've still got your base coat open, so if you do mess up, you can fix it. So lining is something that is really helpful when you're working on 28mm models. It's less necessary for a big guy like this, but on 28mm, it can be hard to put in a lot of shadow, right? Because you're working with such small areas. So lining can help you there because it does put a nice crisp line between areas, and so it separates them visually. And if you do nothing else than a neat base coat and lining and one highlight, your models will actually look fantastic compared to a model that you did without lining, even if you put extra highlights on it. So do think about picking up lining. It is usually one of the core techniques that I recommend when you're just starting out. And not only because it makes the model look more crisp and clean. Here, let me get this guy in focus. There we go. Pastel blue skin and mint green hair. Woohoo! Yes, exactly. Yeah, Gran, I'm going big. Go big or go home. It's a holiday week. Oh, and yes, for those who just came in, we are off work on Friday. So y'all have an awesome long weekend. We are going to have an awesome long weekend. Justin is going golfing.
Yeah, except I just found out my tea time, man.
Yeah.
It's at 6:30 in the morning.
Oh well, but at least it won't be 103.
Yeah, but I think I like the heat more than I like sleep deprivation.
Yeah, I have to actually agree with you there. Yeah, I have to kind of agree with you. I mean, that's always been I really suffer when I don't get good sleep, so.
Completely agree.
Yeah, I'd rather suffer in being out in 100 degrees golfing, I guess. So I'm
Absolutely.
With you. So yeah, and here, guys, I'm going to put just a big broad shadow here. But yeah, as I was saying, lining is a core technique. I consider it, especially if you're not sure how to apply shading. Like if you're not sure where shading should go or how to properly apply it, just lining a mini can take you pretty far. It will help you see like the different areas. It'll bring everything out and make it look a little more crisp. If you are always getting certificates or bronzes at ReaperCon and you want to know how to get to silver, lining is one technique you could look at that will make your work appear a bit more crisp. And I usually say you should learn lining like right after base coating and washing. The other reason to learn lining, other than that it will just make your work look neater, is that it helps you improve brush control. So as a beginning painter, that's one of your biggest challenges, is just making the paint go where you want it. Lining teaches you a bit of paint consistency because you definitely do thin it a little bit to get good lines. And it teaches you brush control. So right away, learning lining is probably going to improve your painting, at least by a couple of levels when you're a beginner. And what you really want with lining is a longer brush with a good tip. I'm using a brush that's quite large, but I am also working on a very big model right now. The important thing, though, is not the size of the brush. It's just that it has a really sharp tip, because you want to be able to draw those thin lines. And the reason this is going to help you, the reason lining is going to help you as a painter, is going to teach you that thinning your paint actually gives you more control over thinner lines, as long as you're also cleaning a bunch of paint off your brush, right? I'm not loading up my brush until it looks like that and putting a line down. That would give me a horrible out of control line. Instead, I'm just wiping a little bit of paint off my brush on the side of the palette, maybe 4 strikes, till it makes, you want to see your brush come to a tip like that. You don't want too much paint. Then you know that you can apply the paint and have really good control. And then you know that if you mess up, it's probably just your brush control. You'll be able to see yourself getting better, and you'll get a feel for the proper consistency of paint for this sort of technique. The high is only 97 today. Yeah, well, in Arizona, that's like shocking, right? Alrighty. Anything? You guys are all... Yeah, nice weather for fire giants, right? May as well paint... Should we paint fire giants in the summer and then frost giants in the winter? Is that the dealio?
I'm down for that.
Or should it be opposite? Do we need something to make us feel warm in the winter and cool in the summer? But I think Collins just told me that the Frost Giant King was like out of stock, so we're stuck with Fire Giant King, I'm afraid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so and I don't want to paint over this area because that's where his cape attaches. Things like the underside of the armor here, guys, where you see that big broad underside, you can just block that in shadow. Honestly, when you're lining, just block it in with a big dark stripe. If you're going to come back and paint this NMM gold or something, that's fine. You can kind of blend your shadow down into that area, but the light is not hitting that, and it's probably going to be covered by the cape anyway, so don't bother to put a lot of effort and time into it. And I could choose at this time to also line between these plates if I really wanted to, but probably should stick to the skin. And you can see that my paint's a little translucent. I mean, that's liner right there. So if I want it to go a little bit darker, then I do want to use just a little bit more on my brush. But I still want my brush to come to that really razor point. That shows that I don't have too much paint in my brush, that I have control. I can also just do 2 lines. Or if I really feel like this is too transparent, I can go and add a little bit more blue liner back into it. You just want a little bit of water in it because you want it to come off your brush really easily. And the solution to that is adding water to your paint. You don't want to be trying to get your brush stroke down and then the paint isn't coming off the brush. What that means is your paint is too thick for the brush that you are using. There we go. All right, big nice shadow under there. Good, good. Here. We know that his arm is going to socket on here, but we can still do a line just in case something shows through when we put his arm on. You never know if it's going to be a perfect fit or not. I'm looking forward to painting this guy with you guys. So I'm looking forward to like tackling various parts of him and painting him kind of the way I would paint him if I was painting him for, myself. Which is sections and slowly coming together. I like to make decisions as I go based on what I see on the model. All right, it looks like this kind of has kind of a weird thing there. This kind of looks, yeah, I can't tell. There's his sword. Let's see. Oh, I bet there's a thing that comes down. Hold on, let me get this on. Yeah, okay. So I wondered what this little band was, and really it's just a connection area. So that's all going to be covered. So that means that I can just paint this whole thing dark, because it's going to be covered totally. I want to paint it dark because if I do look up underneath it, I can see into that area. So I want a shadow there. I don't want to just leave this gray. Then I just have an unpainted area if anybody looks and sees that. So can put in a little bit of a dark shadow. It's not going to hurt. All right. Excellent. 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 Good, good, good. Looking good. The other thing we could do right now is to shade the underside of the arm. And if we want to, we can take advantage of our liner and we can mix it with our skin tone and do a very dark shadow here. Can kind of do a bit of wet blending. Because we know the underside here is going to be dark. So since we have a shadow color open and we've got our base skin tone open, we can take advantage of this and just block in shadows fast. As far as the amount of time you spend on anything, I tend to believe that blocking in shadows quickly, but then going slower with highlights is the way to go for me. With highlights, I usually want to pay attention to where the light is falling and be more precise with my placement. But with shadows, I'm often kind of slapdash. I can always correct them. But here, if I want a nice dark shadow there, see, we can just block that in. Now, I am mixing my skin tone in, so it does look like a darker version of my skin tone. And if I find that I've got some blotchy areas, I can always refine it with more of my base skin tone, or as I'm highlighting. So, do keep in mind you can always correct this. And I mean, I do know my base colors that I used for this skin tone, so I can remix it really easily. And I mean, a lot of people tell me that they're afraid when they mix really complicated color that they're not going to be able to redo it. And the thing is, you don't have to get perfect. As long as you've got it, I like to think as long as I've got my whole base coat down, if I mix this color tomorrow, this brown skin tone, and it's just a little bit off, it's not going to matter because it's the color then that I'm going to be using for, say, all the highlights. But I've already colored all my base skin tone. Chances are that any, difference is not going to be seen by the human eye. Like, if I do my 6 drops of gray and my, 3 drops of orange, my 2 drops of red and 2 of purple, I'm going to get close enough. Especially with all the shading and highlighting. So don't be afraid to mix colors just because you think you won't be able to match it. You don't actually need to match it perfectly. You just need to get close. There we go. Excellent. Let me make sure. I like Saffroko, pretty much for me, it's just, I like to get the liner on the edge. If I do the shading, then I'm going to be lining over it. It really doesn't matter, probably. It's just, for me, I like to define the area I'm working on before I go in and start doing shading and highlighting. So, in this case, I did the lining and then realized, I could just smush these colors together and get a nice natural shadow. So let's do that, right? It's a very organic way. I just work very organically sometimes and just do it as I feel it. But this is usually what I would do. I would line first. And if I was doing a pale skin tone, then I'd be working with a totally different color for shading, right? So I wouldn't just be smooshing blue liner into the already dark skin tone. So at that point, I'd be mixing up a new color, and I wouldn't want... I don't mind pre-lining. I guess there is always the chance that you might cover over some of your lining with your shadow in that case, but in that case, I just adjust. I just like the defined look that I get by lining before I shade. I am going to line between the fingers. A lot of people don't do this. They'll line between major surfaces on the model, but they won't actually line between fingers on the hand. Now, sometimes you can feel like lining between fingers like this on a fist is way too dark, way too overdone. In that case, this is where liners can be very versatile. If everything else is lined with blue liner, just thin down your blue liner so that it's a much more subtle line, because I like the line that I can draw here. Here we go. We'll just use him. So the line that I can draw with full strength or this blue liner right now is pretty dark. But if I take some blue liner over and drop some water into it, then the line that I can get is more subtle. So you can still line, you can still make a nice subtle shadow and just not have it be quite as strong, and it'll still match all your other shading. So that's why I like liners, is on historical models, I tend to go a lot more like this. So like if I'm painting a historical Viking or something, I'll use brown liner and I'll thin it a bit so that all of my lining is there, but it's much more natural. It's not as stark. The darker you go with your lining, the more cartoony you get. The veins, I mean, these veins are, I hate to say, they're you just highlight them. Like you don't, when you look at veins on, say, a big weightlifter, they aren't a different color or anything. They just stick out and catch the light. So you're really just going to be picking them out and making them catch the light. Shading under them, like I just did here, is part of that. It's part of making them pop out, right? So it's not difficult. I mean, you paint veins much the same way you paint anything. And if you want, you could look up pictures of bodybuilders to, you know, kind of inform your decisions. But they are not difficult. You paint them like you paint anything else. That said, visual reference does help sometimes. So you can see like where highlights tend to go or how much they stick out. It also depends kind of on the lighting. We are here, geek. Geeking out. You make your fire giant veins lava filled. That's pretty cool. If this was, I guess, you know, but this isn't the shadow. Like this base coat that I laid down is actually more like a mid-tone mathophile. So I do like to go a little darker with my shadows. And you know what? Even with, where's, do I have something? I don't know if I've got something that shows this right now. But even with, like, I could have kept the darker blue as the shade color between these fingers. It would not look nearly as good as it does here. This is lined. It's contrast. When you're dealing with 28mm figures, you have to push the contrast. If you were painting like a bust mathophile, absolutely leaving like just the shadow color between the fingers could work. Or even maybe a 75mm. But when you get this little, the shadows aren't realistic on a model this small, just from the light falling. And so I find that you need to actually go quite dark to get the contrast for these little fingers to stand out. So, sorry I don't have an actual, you know, like skin tone colored model around to show you that, but I always line between fingers, and I get very annoyed when I see hands that aren't, because they always look like blobs. I don't care. It's like, unless you are going from a very dark skin tone to a very light skin tone for some reason, in the case of, you know, from a very dark brown up to a fair skin tone, like extreme shadows, maybe. If you were doing, say, a Frazetta. If you were doing Frazetta, where all of his, like, skin goes from a light golden color down to, you know, almost black, you could pull that then. But you do need a fair amount of drama on 28mm to get the details to stand out. In my opinion. And this is my style, remember, guys. Everybody, if you do it and it works for you, great. But that said, the reason I mentioned that about lining the fingers on 28mm models is that the rules are different for 28mm. You do want more contrast for 28mm. The rules change when you start painting bigger models, when you start painting 54s or 75s. It's around 75mm scale that a model starts to cast realistic shadows by itself. And that's when you want to pull back on shading. When going very dark on shading has the possibility of really not, if you're trying for realism, right? If you're trying for realism, going very dark on shading with a bigger model can look very wrong. It depends on what you're trying to do. It also depends on your light source. If you've got a bright light source, you're going to have really dark shadows. So it's so different. It always depends, right? Always depends. Sweet. Do-do-do.
I hope you don't mind me coming in the middle of your recording video.
It's not. It's Reaper, so you know. David is intruded upon our stream, but that's okay.
Oh, you're still streaming?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I recorded everything yesterday, and so now I'm still streaming. No, normally we go till 11.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm doing Mr. Blocking and Mr. Fire Giant Skin
I saw
Tones.
you holding your Dark Sword.
Oh, that put you off. Yeah, I was showing how lining between the fingers on 28mm models really is necessary, in my opinion. So, yeah. All right. I am just... Yeah, what Coyote says, you know, you have a really dark line between your fingers, absolutely, or your fist. You know, you do now, and you know, it varies. Now it's very thin, right? So at that scale, you would argue at that scale you wouldn't see that. But again, you're trying to make the details in the model stand out. You don't want your fist to just look like a blob. If I take my fist and I walk across, you know, to the parking lot over there, you guys might only see a light blob if I make a fist. But I'll be at the same height relative, you know, on the other side of that parking lot as if I was a 28mm model. But because we're looking at these models so closely, we have to artificially enhance them. It's making everything stand out. We're creating an illusion with 28mm models. They don't cast shadows like we do in our big human selves. You know, they don't even cast. This guy casts pretty realistic shadows. Like if you look at him, if I have the problem here is I have a lot of diffused light. But let's say, let me turn off one of my lights. Hold on. We're gonna get dark, and then we're gonna put this guy. So this guy casts pretty realistic shadows if you've got a single light source. Like, he does have a strong shadow on the side of his face. You can see the shadows under various areas. Strong shadow here, shadows here. A little harder because I need to really put the light down a bit. But, you know, so this guy's big enough that you can see how various areas cast shadow, right? But when you have a tiny model... I don't really have a tiny model. Curses. All my tiny models are partially painted. But suffice to say that when you have a tiny model... you're not going to see as much. You've got to over accentuate it all. It's scale. He's got to be, yeah, I would guess about 75 mil. And really thick. Sorry, trash. But yeah, you find you can get away with a lot less shading on big models. Less dramatic shading for sure, especially if you're going for a more naturalistic and not dramatic lighting effect. The minute you want some drama in your lighting, though, that's when that all goes south, right? Because remember Mr. Rock Troll here. We wanted him to be really dramatic, so you can see how dark the shadows put on his torso, right? Whereas this guy, I'm going with, you know, more my usual style, and I'm not going so much with a dark shadow on one side of the figure and a really bright light source on the other. But you can see how much drama this gives you. I mean, he's big. He casts his own shadows, but over-accentuating it still gives you a very cool effect. So it depends on what you're going for. And these guys are similar scales. So scale is very interesting, and how we paint scale to get different effects is very interesting. Blocking a dark shadow underneath this arm. Since I have the paint open, I'm mixing the two paints together, kind of looking at it to see where my shadow will be. I'm just blocking it in. It doesn't have to blend. It just needs to be kind of there. If I was doing it like the rock troll, we would be doing a very dark shadow under every muscle. And we're not so much doing that here. And it's all a choice. It's all a stylistic choice, right? How dramatic you want to go. And I'm just looking at, like, where are the shadows going to be here? He's going to have a dark shadow here. I've already kind of blocked it in on that muscle. He's going to have a dark shadow here underneath his vein. He's going to have a dark shadow here. He's going to have a little overhang from the shoulder pads. This area is going to be dark. He's going to have his sword on. There. So he's going to have a bit of a dark shadow you see right under here. Because this cuff is going to cause a shadow right under there. And again, I'm just blocking it in. I'm being really rough. I'm not trying to be real precise here. You don't have to be. You can paint loose here. And really, whether you enjoy really tight painting or really loose painting, it is usually an individual choice. Some people enjoy both, just at different times. Some people really like blocking in really loose and then really enjoy like the process of tightening that up. And some people like to work tight from the beginning and just slowly develop everything. And I've done both. For a very long time, I was really just, everything was tight from the beginning on, and that was it. And that also was my canvas style, I'm afraid, is I'm a control freak. But lately I've been switching it up, so it's always nice to kind of try to switch it up. All right, so block that in, block that all in. See, that's where lining can really help you. If you find that you have a hard time exaggerating contrast, at least line. If you line, you're going to have that single, thin, really dark line. That can take the place of a dark shadow for you. That can get you on the way toward establishing contrast. That's why I said that if I had a choice as far as like how to teach people to paint, it would be like base coat, wash, lining, then up to like layering, dry brushing, or texturing, whatever you want to do. But I definitely would include lining in one of the first techniques that I taught people, both because it helps you build brush control and it helps you get an eye for that contrast. It will make you braver about contrast. Because just that little bit of lining makes that knee stand out so much better. And I just lined. I didn't do any fancy shading, or I didn't have to blend. That's a nice thing, right? Lining can be very forgiving. It trains your brush control. It can be a little frustrating when you first start, when you don't have very good brush control, but it trains your brush control. And it also means that you don't have to worry about smooth blending shading. You can just kind of block and you'll still have that line for your dark shadow, so you can work on things like highlighting. Just that little difference that line makes in bringing out an area is huge. And even more so if we weren't already working with a dark base coat, right? Right, exactly, Gren. Yeah, brown liner, like I said, the thing to remember, normally if I'm using it straight up, I'll do 6 drops of brown liner, 1 drop of water. Just to get it a little fluid, so that you can draw real fine lines with it. The lines go in between one surface and another, Iggy. So anywhere one surface meets another, so anywhere the skin meets a band, or the hair meets the face, or the helmet meets the cloak. And the only other place that I line outside of that basic rule is usually things like between fingers. Technically, that's still one surface meeting another, each finger being taken individually. But that would be like probably the difference there. I also line around the eyeballs, like the eyeballs here are filled in with blue liner, and I line around the mouth. So a lot of the beginner mistake that I see a lot is people not lining the mouth. So essentially, yeah, anywhere one surface meets another. This includes if it's like a surface that's going to be a gold filigree, like this band here against like dark armor. I would line around that wherever you want a detail to stand out. Like in here, there's a lot of details to stand out. So there's a lot of lining on this figure. This model will be a great practice mini for lining because it's got lining. You can line in between these little diamond shapes. You can line around here. You can line around the beard. There's a crap ton of lining on this figure. Hey, no problem. There are a lot of noobs here. All of us are noobs in one way or another. If you threw a tube of oil paint at me and told me to paint a mini, I would be a noob too. Alright, let's see here. I think we've got some pretty good shading down. I didn't really do the bottom of his hand here. So I'll do a quick block in there. Just pretty much want the bottom of these fingers to be dark. And I don't need it to go all the way up the side here. But I might want to do a little bit of a shadow. And I might want to also do a little bit of a shadow here. Because this cuff is really going to cast a shadow. Like this little piece that's overhanging his fingers. And some of this stuff is stuff that I would maybe work on a little bit later in the process. Like when I was in the middle of highlighting, I might realize, oh, well, there's an overhang here. I need a shadow. And I might adjust it then, but I noticed it now, so we're doing it now. So yeah, so I think that's pretty good there. The other hand is not yet set up. 9 months. Pretty good knowledge base there for 9 months, Banthophile. He's got this awesome cape. Yeah, you could definitely line every single scale on this cape. The only way I wouldn't is if I started very dark. Like if I started with a very dark brown red and just brought it up, I might get away without lining. And then I would just put deeper shadows with glazes, wherever the cape is kind of, concave. Alright, let's do this hand, and then we'll be ready to do skin highlights tomorrow. So let's see. You always want to, look, because you might be tempted, and I've done this before and been much chagrined. You might be tempted to highlight it just like you're holding a sword, but you have to remember he's holding his sword out over his head, so the hand is actually facing the light on top here. So that means we want the top to be pretty light. I still want to do a line. A real thin line, since this is all in the light. Keep my lines really thin. And for a wonder, my dog slept through the whole stream. Knock on wood. That she'll keep sleeping. So now I can go a little heavier. Since he's holding the sword up, these knuckles here are going to be a little darker. The tips of his fingers are going to be a little darker here under this knuckle. And underneath the thumb here is going to be quite dark. And there's a little bit of a shadow there. This is all very shaded underneath the sword. Sword would cast a big shadow there. Doo-doo-doo. There we go. There we are. Much better. Lines here. Oh, that finger sticks out a little. There we go. That's a little bit better. Rawr. Rawr. Yeah, this is a hobby you tend to come back around to, Grin. Yeah, oil paint is just kind of like, Bean Mitch. Just been painting since the start of the lockdown. Well, good. I hope that you're learning stuff from the stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I try to keep up with everybody. And I never mind. I actually really like it when you guys ask a lot of questions, because sometimes it gets me to talk about things that I might not otherwise talk about. So yeah, so we've got some nice shading, and see the nice shading on this muscles, these muscles especially. I really like blue liner as a shadow for dark skin a lot. I really, really like it. I mean, not only is our shadows naturally blue under a blue sky, but I just think it's a good contrast, even if he's underground. I think it's a really nice contrasting color for shadows, even if it's not quite as realistic then. Do I want anything else? Yeah, I kind of want to shade a little bit under his brow ridge, actually. His eyes are deep set, so I'm going to use some of this thinner blue liner. Kind of put his shadow in there. Chances are we're not going to see much except his eyebrows up here anyway. These eyes, and the glowing eyes, if I decide to do glowing eyes. Do a little bit more. His little nose is sticking out here. There we go. A little bit better. Rawr, he says. Cool, I'm glad. I'm glad you love the stream. Welcome. Alrighty. Oh, good. Well, Iggy, as I have said before, I actually learned more about acrylic painting. I went to art school, and I learned more about acrylic painting through painting miniatures than I ever learned in art school. So, don't feel bad if you don't have an art background. I say that a lot. I mean, I have an art background, but I still managed to learn a heck of a lot more about painting through doing this. Miniature painting is a really good get you in entry level drug, I guess, for just art in general. I think it really is, there's so many resources out there. There's so many different ways to do it. I mean, all the good teachers I know emphasize that, you know, you can find your own way with it, but there's also a lot of technique and a lot of help out there for technique. And a lot of thought behind technique, and there's so many different styles, and there's so many different ways to think about it. I think this hobby is a fantastic way to get into the arts. And this is somebody who's loved art my whole life, but who I constantly meet people who have never done a lick of art in their life, and then they pick up painting miniatures. And I think that's fantastic. I love it. I love it because I think everybody is a little bit artistic. We don't give ourselves enough credit for it, but we all have creativity in us. And this stuff, I mean, miniature painting is so relaxing. It's so nice to de-stress and just paint. So I love this hobby, and I'm glad that more people are getting into it. Yeah, gateway drug to art for sure, Jedi Jared. And don't let anybody ever tell you this isn't art. Like, show them some of the really, really good stuff out there and try to then ask them, yeah, well, of course when you start, it's more like a craft, right? You're learning basic techniques. I mean, that's the same if you're just painting a canvas. You know, you're learning how to manipulate the paint, and you're learning how it goes on the canvas and how much to thin it and how colors work, you know. It's the same thing with miniatures when you first start out. But even a beginning painter can put together something that looks really quite good. So, you know, never underrate yourself, and never think that, you know, don't let anybody tell you it's not art. You know, just aspire to it as much or as much or as little as you wish. YT method file? Tell me what YT is. Oh, YouTube. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when I painted, I didn't have any videos. I had to self-teach for the most part. Like, we were working... Like, there were people online talking about painting, but they were trying to describe it in words, and you never had any video. And very few pictures really couldn't convey how to execute a technique, right? So you had to reverse engineer it and learn to do it yourself. And I think that was very useful to me as a painter. I think it really made me more adventuresome in the long run and more willing to try things just to think that I could. But now it's really nice that you guys have so many resources. You've got Twitch streams, you've got people who've been in the hobby like me for over 25 years who are willing and who'd like to teach you guys, right? So, and who are willing to sit and answer questions for you. So, yeah, that's something that I never had. So I think that it's great that, I mean, you can make so much progress now as a miniature painter between, like, in your first year. In your first year, you can get to, like, level silver at ReaperCon if you really apply yourself. I mean, I had people come to Paint Club as beginning painters and end up winning silver and gold after a couple of years of practice and applying themselves. So it's totally doable. Yes. Yeah, it is, Joliger. I mean, when I was doing the fingers, the shading on the fingers, the blue liner is thinned quite a bit. I'd say probably it's like 2-to-1 here. The original pool is around 4-to-1 blue liner to water. It's a lot more solid. So when you see these solid blue liners, I usually recommend going like 5, at the very least, at like 5 or 6 drops of paint and 1 of water. Just that 1 drop of water is enough to make it smooth enough for you to draw a decently thin line. If you want to draw a thinner or finer line, or you want a more subtle effect, add more water. I wouldn't go more, this is more of almost like a wash, a shading, layering consistency here, because I was trying to do some shading that was more subtle on some of the skin. So this isn't necessarily a good liner as far as the thinning level. I probably wouldn't go under 3-to-1, but it depends. Like I was saying earlier, I like to use on historical models where I'm trying to go very natural. I will thin my liner a lot more because it'll make a more subtle line, and so it will be a lot less cartoony. The darker and thicker your liner, the more cartoony an effect you're going to get. Boop. Oh yeah, so much easier to learn now. Oh yeah, Dragon Eye. Well, hey from eBay land. Boy, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? That was when I was first starting to get like decent good. And it, I would say that I went... Probably, with me, it was amount of work, because when I quit my real job and moved out to the East Coast to just paint for a living, that 6 months was when I really catapulted from a pretty good painter to a national level painter, as far as a national award winner. At the end of that phase was when I won my first Golden Demon. But yeah, that's actually how I got better too, was following Jennifer's eBay sales. And there was, I forget, there was one mini she did. Um, no, granted, I actually did thin it. I thinned it a little bit. I always thin my liner a little bit. It's a little thick out of the bottle to get a really thin, controlled line with. So you gotta put a tiny bit of water in it. Like I said, 5 or 6 to 1 paint to water, minimum. Yeah, but back, I forget which miniature it was that Jennifer did, but I pretty much, it was one of the Wolfen, I think, where I just pretty much yanked her picture of it and just got that model and just worked on painting it the way that she did and trying to reverse engineer what she'd done. Since then, I like to do that. I like to kind of look at somebody's paint job and kind of reverse engineer how they did it. I think it's really valuable. And it keeps you thinking about different things. Oh, you still have saved pictures. Yeah, yeah. Gosh, those old things. I don't even have pictures of a lot of the old stuff that I did. Because that's like computers and cameras ago, right? It's eons for me. Oh, Studio DKS, is that is that Derek Schubert I see? Yeah, oh my god. Yeah, we were just talking about the bad old days, Derek. The eBay days. Derek and I miniatures following Jennifer and I when we were on eBay. That was before I left Madison. That was a long time ago. Wow, we got all the names here. Yeah. Yeah, and you were, if I recall, you were painting Sandra Garrity minis. Like, isn't it around that time, the time that you first came up to Ron at Gen Con and with a mini you'd painted of Sandy's? Like, boy, so many. I hate to say we're old. Right? We're experienced, dang it. We have wisdom. We have accumulated wisdom, and that is why we are here teaching you guys, right? Well, I'm glad you got time to, yep, we're old. Derek telling it like it is. You bet. Yeah, I like my silver hair. I really like my silver hair. I wouldn't give it up for the world. I earned every one of these. Yeah, it is. Yeah, Gran, right? Yeah, in engineering, I believe it. Derek is a very nice guy. He is awesome. Oh, Icor, that's old days. Wow, wow. Well, that's great to talk about this with you guys, because yeah, we've been around for a while now, so it is good. It's good, and we're about the end. We went a little late, but I started late, so I wanted to go a little late with you guys today. So yeah, so we're gonna go back, and tomorrow we're gonna work on highlighting Mr. Fire Giant's skin, and we might block in his hair too. It's what I'm thinking. And yeah, so that'll let me talk about kind of highlighting dark skin tones and my different strategies for it, and the different effects you can get, and the way that dark brown skin tones tend to highlight as well, as far as like natural lighting. And yeah, we can work on it. We can maybe work on some skin textures on these big knuckles, even though there's no knuckle texture painted up here. We can totally suggest it. So yeah, we can do a bunch of stuff on the skin tones. And remember, we're not here Friday, 4th of July. We're gonna have fun. I'm gonna be slacking. Maybe probably cooking. Alrighty.
We have to grill.
We have to grill. Yeah, we have to decide what we're grilling now. Yeah, Derek. That's right. Derek is a Golden Demon winner. I think I may have a white dwarf with one of your minis in it, Derek, that I found ages ago and saved. I'll have to see. Yes, I hope you guys had a great day. Justin, do we have a raid? Yeah, these days it's much harder. These days is much harder, isn't it, Derek? Yeah, the demons are much more difficult now. Although, of course, the first the return of Golden Demons to the U.S. Totally went awry with the coronavirus this year when Adepticon had to be canceled. David is very chagrined. He's sitting across from me going, yeah. He spent so much time on his Abaddon and his Marathi. But now he'll have even more entries for next year. He can, like, do a sweep or something, do, like, 5 or 6 categories. Or for whatever the next year is that they do GDs. I have 2, Trash. I have 2. I'm very proud of them.
All right, Miss Ann. We're going to be rating Jimmy the Brush.
Jimmy is the Brush. Oh, we've got 100 people. All right, guys. Well, cool. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. We're going to come back. We're going to do more skin tones on Mr. Giant. I hope you all had fun. You guys were really chatty today, and I really enjoyed it. This was super fun with you guys today. I hope you have a fantastic Tuesday, all right? Let's hope it's not a repeat one day. Bye.
Keep being awesome. Spread the Reaper love.
Thanks for tuning in, Derek.
And check us out later today on the Crow's Nest at 4 p.m. Central.